Alright, how about another one of these rant-like things? This time I'm less interested in just kind of, I don't know, I guess I'll still be shooting from the hip here, but less interested in the same kind of rant where I'm, I don't know, trying to express some kind of, oh my god, I don't understand why people do things this way or that way. I don't know if I do that actually. But I was looking for some way to introduce it, and that's what came to mind immediately, right? This one's more because of some discussions I've had on BGG recently about what kind of game group. It got me thinking, what kind of game group did I really enjoy? I went through good and bad times with gaming. When I was a young guy, you know, my high school friends and I were mostly into role-playing games. But we would get together and play a game and we'd try to figure out it, and we'd get half of it wrong, I'm sure. Things like Kingmaker and stuff like that, but we'd have kind of a good time. We'd have more than kind of a good time, but it would be an enjoyable experience. And nobody got too upset about having to learn the rules at a session or, you know, screwing stuff up or anything. As I got older, things definitely changed. I know at some point or another I started getting more upset with myself for screwing up and felt more disturbed about not getting rules right with other people, even with myself. But it was still very cool to just, you know, break out a game that we would be sitting, it wasn't my optimal, but to break out a game and say, okay, let's do this, because we all agreed that would be what we would do. We haven't done that ever, it looks interesting. We're all kind of in the mood for it. But of course that means no preparation here. So, to some extent, there's something very nice about that spur of the moment, hey, let's play this. But it sucks because, yeah, it does take longer to explain the rules to a game when you're not really ready for it, when you're not prepared to do so. Although, if you watch my videos, that's about as prepared as I get. You know, I read the rules. If my first familiarization with the rules didn't help me, well, we're going to bungle through it anyway, right? So, I think for a lot of people it'll come down to, well, geez, man, you know, put some more effort into explaining your rules. Certainly on a video it should make more sense. No, I ain't going to do that, and I wouldn't do that if I was explaining the rules to people at a club, at a gaming group or whatever. I also don't really expect that everybody should come into the game knowing all the rules. That seems ridiculous to me, and it's actually one of the things that kind of drives me away from the local group, is I feel like they'll put up a game and I'm not sure if it's a learning game or if we're expected, yeah, got to know how to play Eclipse if you're going to play it, or you got to know how to play Indian Abyss. Well, god damn it, even if I knew how to play a game, I will have forgotten within a few weeks, okay? My gaming life is just too rich and my mind too small to hold a significant amount of the game in my head. Once I start playing it, I might remember some stuff, but I'm going to want that rules explanation 90% of the time. There may be a few games that I don't need it. I don't need it in 1830, you know, because all I really need to do is look up one or two rules maybe that I don't remember terribly well, and my damn pipe's pissing me off. And otherwise, I can pretty much do it on autopilot. Other 18xx's? Well, I probably do need a little bit of a refresher. At least on what's different, what's new. Most of them I've only got maybe a handful of plays on, maybe 10, 12 plays at the most on the Mayfair ones. And on other ones, shit, I probably never saw them. You know, there's some pretty esoteric ones out there from Deep Thought that might be great games. I'm hoping there are. I'm pre-ordered on a couple of them. Never going to see the light of day, I don't think, because my position doesn't seem to move. There are some games where I'll want to, because there's such an investment involved, like in Empires and Arms, where I'm perfectly willing to get together and hash out the rules with other people who know them well and make sure that we understand them. There are games that it's fine that a couple of people at the table understand the rules and maybe we'll come to some disagreement about them, but they're fairly small. I really did not enjoy playing Europa Universalis, the hash out circumstances, which was basically two of us trying to figure out what the rules meant. And I had my interpretation, he had his, they differed significantly. And then we were going to teach a bunch of new players how to play. That was not an optimal situation. Especially since we weren't playing the grand campaign, we were just playing the starting scenario. It was painful to get together and spend 3-4 hours going through the rules, trying to figure out what meant what, when I already had a pretty good idea that disagreed with him, and he had his pretty good idea of how these things should be handled. And I'm not sure we came to a conclusion there. In Empires and Arms, usually most of the things that I supported, everyone else finally came around to in our group. The one that they didn't, well, it's clearly violating the rules. But most of the others, they came to. Anyway, that kind of gets me to what I really wanted to discuss here, which is not my lighter, which is a fucking Zippo and therefore doesn't work for me after about... I had a cheap knockoff of a Zippo that worked so much better, and that's why I use these matches here, because I can't get the light. It's got a fairly new flint, not real new. But, some of it's just personalities, you know, and familiarity with people. I missed the hell out of being with a group of people that I felt comfortable, you know, where maybe we're adding one person to the group in any given day, or two people who are new, but for the most part, a lot of us have a lot of shared experience there. That's not something I'm going to get magically, right? But I guess what I'm looking at is, you know, people who aren't going to be anal retentive about the fact that we have to go through the rules for an hour and a half for a 7-hour game. The comfort of knowing what's expected there. Now, in my absolute optimal, someone knows what they're going to play ahead of time. Well, everyone knows what they're going to play ahead of time. At least one person has the time, the guy who owns it, if it's only one, but at least one person has the time to prepare for it. There is going to be some degree of rules, explanation, and refresher, because somebody is going to be essentially running the game. It may not be me. I would rather it not always be me. It often tended to be because I had the most games. The group would more or less not want to play the same game very often. You know, I'm a dilettante when it comes to games. I don't want to sit down and, if I'm playing very few games in a year with other people or by myself, and I consider pretty much any number I play to be very few nowadays because I have so damn many and so much less time. But I want to explore more games. Yes, there may be the time when everybody in the group kind of says, wow, that was really cool. Let's try that again because I don't feel like we grasped it. And you know, I can get that. Usually games like that I'm less interested in because they aren't as much fun the first time. But I can totally get that. I can totally get being addicted to something that's so cool that you want to play it again. Maybe not the very next time that you game, but maybe once in a few months later or whatever. Just to give it some more playtime, to give it some more exploration chance, to try to understand more about it. The goal here in a group that I'd want to be in is not to become some sort of expert at some game, not to become a regular, you know, hobby of that one game, even if it's only a hobby for half a year or whatever. That sounds really depressing to me. We had circumstances like that in my gaming group back in Buffalo, where we would get together and essentially play a handful of games that nobody disagreed too strongly to, and eventually it ended up kind of turning me against all of those games. The most notable of the pile was 1835, which to me was actually the least pleasant of the 18XX games. But that was always kind of brought as a default with the, oh yeah, well, I don't, for whatever reason, one of the guys who owned a lot of XX games other than me liked that one the best, and he would just always bring that. We ended up playing it a lot because he would nix just about everything I brought, and I would be opposed to just about everything he brought, and then eventually I hated doing that too. We just had such divergent tastes at the end that it wasn't working out there. But then we broke up into basically two groups. And one went very much like what I like. And we had at least one other person who really despised the idea of playing, more than I did, of playing the same game again and again. In fact, he probably kind of sold me on that feeling, although my experiences with the larger group had kind of soured me on it quite a bit already and had thrown me into that camp. But prior to that, we used to get together and play like Hammer of Thor, which was a horrible game, regular, different grouping, but some of the same people. Wow, nice lightning. I'm going to have to go if there's a lightning storm coming. We used to get together and play, yeah, Hammer of Thor, lightning. Good combination. Let me see if I say it again. Hammer of Thor. No. Oh, yeah, there we go. Wow. Yeah, I'm going to have to go. But we used to get together and play these games almost addictively. We would get together and play that again and again and again, like 3 times in one night. Largely that was because we would play at another person's house, not at mine. There was more room there, and it was a better location given the lives of all of us. And I didn't want to haul a game with me, especially if I didn't know if we could sell that game to the other people to play. I also didn't like carrying my games. They would get damaged, whatever. I also had a hell of a lot less at that point. Anyway, that would be one factor, is this willingness and ability to shift through games a lot. Now, I have a reasonable amount of, hey, I'm willing to compromise. So if I always like to play different games and so do some other people, and others always want to play the same games, and it feels like we're not too far from coming up with some sort of, okay, if we, let's say we all agree someone gets to pick the big game for the week, or the month or whatever, however often we're playing, someone gets to pick it, and everybody else more or less agrees, all right, I'll go along with that. It could even be someone gets to pick all the games for one day in that one session. So if they want to do a lot of small games, that'll work. But the idea there was cobbling together a group that had agreeable tastes that could come to a compromise that would work. And actually, our overall size of our group had gotten large enough that maybe we were showing up with too many people to play one game. In some cases, like we'd show up and there'd be 7 people, and nobody would have a 7-player game. Or maybe I would, but it would be Crusades. And there'd be a couple of people who said, no, I'm not playing that. So we'd split into 2 little dinky games, and it would just suck there. I'm not quite sure what the solution is. And, this is a solution to a problem I no longer have. Now I have the problem of no gaming group at all, or this option to go someplace where I'm not sure I just even feel comfortable enough to throw something out there. I did once. I threw out one suggestion, which was La Révolution Française, and I got like at least three people who kind of said, oh yeah, that'd be interesting. And that would get us to the kind of minimal for that game, but it's not the optimal. I'd want to play it in 5 or 6, there's no question to that. So now I've committed that as the thing I wanted to play, and luckily, eventually, like 2 of the people dropped out with, oh no, I've got something else I got to do. The idea of bringing a game to the wrong number of people for that game, and then hoping to maybe attract someone who probably isn't into it at all, that doesn't work. I mean, you don't really want the warm body in the game. It's much, much better to have the people there for it. And I don't know how to put forward a suggestion. It's very easy. For some people, somebody put forward, yeah, how about TI3 next time? I've got 8 seats open, Well, they know if they get 3 or 4, it's still an okay game, I guess. And they also know this is a popular enough game. Obviously, there's going to be people there. Well, the things that I want to get played probably aren't that popular. I'm not quite... And there's this sort of reticence there, too, because it isn't a comfortable feeling for me to try to push for a game with people I don't really know and I'm not really comfortable with. So I'm always sitting back kind of watching what other people suggest and saying, I don't really want to go for that. But if I could get, say, at that gaming group or at my house or anywhere, some little cadre that would get together and say, you know what? Let us agree, we're going to do this, and we can start expanding, but we're willing to get together and sit down and play a game every session that club meets, or every 2 weeks at my house, or whatever. But it would be better to do it out because there's more opportunity for expanding the group, so I'd actually rather do it in a more public location. It would be fantastic. It would be fantastic to say, you know what? We have similar enough tastes that we're willing to agree to put our hands in each other's fate, or our fate in each other's hands. I don't know how it works the other way. That's what I'd like. That's what I'd really like. Would it come down to some sort of expectation that somebody's always there or not? Well, obviously, there has to be some kind of cooperative grouping here. And, whether that's once a month, once every 2 weeks, once every 2 months, whatever it works out to, I think there does have to be some kind of commitment. Now, it doesn't mean it's absolute, hey, something came up, I can't do it this week, whatever. There can be mechanisms. I've worked on one that kind of penalize someone who misses a week or a session as agreed to by sort of delaying one of their own choices. It's not a real penalty, they still get to game, and assuming that the group more or less trusts one another in terms of that, hey, put your fate in my hands, and then next week my fate will be in your hands, and sort of this core that can kind of generally agree, we're going to bring games that work well together. Obviously, it wouldn't work well for me to be in a group whose main focus is on Euro games, but it might not work terribly well for me to be in a group who never is willing and interested to play a Euro. I don't know if such groups exist. Most of the wargamers I know actually are okay, and more than okay, I actually enjoy an occasional non-war game. Personally, though, I'm actually about 50-50 on war games versus non-war games. But Euros maybe take 10% of that other 50%. No. Let me change that. I'm not 50-50 on war games. War games mean less to me in that group setting than what I call my WIMP games, right? If you want to call Kingmaker and Britannia war games, well, it's probably more like 75-25 or 60-40 as to whether or not. Then what I'd span over war games actually covers the majority of what I'd be interested in doing. If you're not going to include those, and I tend not to, there are very few good multiplayer war games that I really want to sit down and play with people. Which means, in that kind of circumstance, I'd say maybe 5-10% of what I'd want to bring is war games. Although I probably would be open to more if there are more good multiplayer war games. But, you count the Indian Abyss, you count the, Scandinavia that I did before, if you're willing to count La Révolution Française, well, that's hitting my sweet spot in games. But then probably so is Battlestar Galactica, although I haven't gotten to that yet. So are a lot of other things. And if I could find people who kind of hit that sweet spot, I would be a much, much happier person in terms of the idea of gaming with others. Because I think that relationships would kind of form within that. Of course, there's other factors too. Maybe my play style is just too damn annoying to other people. Because I kind of don't like being put in a position where I have no strict time limit, but everybody gets kind of upset if there's no if I take my time. Decisions that require me to take time will take my time. If I'm playing Indian Abyss, I'm going to be looking at those menus and counting every goddamn point. Same thing with Dominant Species, but in Dominant Species I'm going to be hating it because it doesn't seem to mean anything to me. Indian Abyss seems to mean what it applies to, and it's much simpler. Not the amount of time maybe that I spend on decisions, but the actual decisions themselves I can boil out a little simpler. Either way though, or Age of Renaissance, I'm going to be spending my time trying to figure out what the hell to do. I've got that huge AP problem on those kind of games. Some other games, I may not. But I understand that some people do. You open up Britannia for the first time, and damn, that's going to take a lot of effort to figure out. And actually, I think that ruins Britannia, so I would almost never suggest it, but I would play it with people who like it, even knowing that there's a new player there that's going to stretch it from a 4 to a 6 hour game. As my friend said, it's a good 4 hour game. It's a terrible 6 hour game. But if you bring it to new people and they care enough to try to win hard, it's going to be a 6 hour game. It's coming again. Anyway, there's also a vehicle, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'm kind of putting this plea out there to people, if there's anybody local who watches this other than other than Jason, whose time is very limited, towards trying to get together and doing more, because I don't know if, you know, it's a worthwhile thing for anyone but me for it. You know, what the hell? Who cares about this dude? But yeah, it's, I feel like I'm missing something in my life, and that maybe the kind of friendships that I could develop through gaming maybe could happen. Maybe not. Maybe I'm too damn old and cantankerous for games anymore, you know, for being in a gaming group anymore. Maybe I'm too set in my ways. Maybe I like playing with myself too much. I know that often is what it comes down to. My decision not to go on a Saturday, part of it is travel, but, you know, I got somebody willing to offer to give me a ride there. Part of it is it's just less comfortable than certain circumstances. I can't smoke, I can't drink, I can't, you know. But it is nice to be gaming with people, and it is something I kind of miss. And hell, you know, maybe there are people out there who, I don't know what, you know, who feel like they're in kind of the same sort of place, and maybe don't want to walk into that situation without a little bit more armor than I feel like I get when I go there, and maybe they feel like they get when they go there. That they want to know, you know, all right, let's plan for this. It's an expandable game. It'll hold 4. It's a good game in 4, but it can hold 5 or 6 too. Let's do it. And, you know, maybe we'll attract more people. Maybe we won't. We went there with Distant Plain with the hope of getting 4 people. Unfortunately, we chose a bad week to do it. Because Phil Eklund was there, and he had something he wanted to test out, and he also had Origins, which a lot of people wanted to play with him there so that they could actually like understand the game, because in a lot of cases Phil is the only person who understands his games enough to get you to really be able to play it correctly. And that's a dig against his rule books, actually. More than anything else. You really have to fight through to kind of get up. But Origins was a tough trip for me. I don't think I got anywhere near enough out of it. You know? And I think there's got to be more to it. Just knowing Eklund's designs. But, yeah. You know, I guess this is kind of one of those kind of embarrassing things to ask. But hell, if you're in the Pheonix area and you do want to try to do that, we can try to hook together a few people, maybe not every 2 weeks. I probably am not really capable of doing that. But on a somewhat more. And you know, the same damn thing goes for Constant World. The reason I don't go every year, like the reason I don't go for the whole week, is I just don't trust that I can get people together for something that I think's worth doing. I tried putting out kind of feelers last year, and what the hell happens? I sign up for the event, put up a couple of games that I think I'd like to do. Nobody signs up for them, or not 4 people, so we're not going to be able to get on there. Something like La Grande Guerre or Empires of the Middle Ages. Although I could probably put 5 or 6 things that I'd be really into doing. But then by the time it rolls around, I've paid my money, I've taken the big thing, I've taken my time off work, and now, do I really want to go and try to squeak into some game, or just go there for kind of there's like usually one game a day that's kind of a smaller thing, like Sword of Rome or Age of Renaissance or something like that. There's a guy who runs a series of tournaments. I could see doing that at the event, and then play some Down in Flames or some open gaming or something to fill out my time if I can't get what I really want there. And then there's this fear of, geez, what if I get the game that I really want, this huge week-long thing, and the people who are there just don't mesh well together? What if we really dislike each other? Wow. I don't think I want to do that either. At least people who are watching my videos know how fucked up I am. And, I don't know. At least a couple of people I chatted with who do watch them, I felt some connection with. Anyway. You know what this is like? This is like going up and asking some chick out of the blue who I'm totally obsessed over. No, I don't know who the hell you are. It's sort of an opposite. It's like, I don't know what the hell it is. It's not the opposite. It's not anything. But yeah, it's sort of this, hey, I could use that thing, and I don't know how to reach out to people because I'm a fucking ass bee. Maybe this will work.